Hey, Chicago, what do you say? This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. I'm Cody Delmendo, joined by old pal, old friend. He's not really old, but he is a friend.
I'm
Ryan
younger.
Herrera.
Yeah. It's been a while. I've been out for a little bit.
Been out. We sent you to Japan to get Yamamoto, and you failed.
Yeah, that's my bad. Sorry about that.
Welcome back. Ryan comes back. Luke stays. He's still celebrating Christmas. I think he wanted to spend some extra family time this week. So
He might be drinking mojitos down in Mexico.
He could be back in Mexico. We can, or maybe he's out in New York trying to convince Scott Boras to bring his market down on Cody Bellinger. I don't know. But he's it's the holiday season. He want to take a few extra days off. So don't blame him there. Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. I don't know how else to say it because I know we don't all celebrate Christmas, right?
Holiday weekend's good.
Holiday weekend, right? Happy holidays. Hit that like, hit the subscribe button if you're new here. What was your favorite part of the holiday weekend, Ryan?
So I was down in Texas. My brother lives down there now, so me and my parents went down, hung out for a little bit, and that's always fun. Get to see my nephew, a.k.a. my brother's dog, Charlie.
Oh, Charlie.
He's like less than a year old, and he's insane, so that's always interesting. Keeps things lively, but nice to get out, see some family, and just hang out for a little bit.
There you go. Well, you missed out on all the rain. It rained and it was 50 degrees yesterday.
It was a weird Christmas because we flew back in yesterday, and so the airports were pretty dead because no one was actually traveling on Christmas Day. It was kind of nice, but you land and it's pouring rain. You have 45, 50 degrees, and we're like, what the? This isn't Christmas.
And I drove down to God's country to see my mom and my brother, and it rained the entire way there and the entire way back. It was awful. But I did get to meet my niece for the first time, 5-month-old, literally the size of my arm. So that was probably my favorite part of the weekend. Anyway, hope y'all had a great holiday weekend, like I said, and thanks for joining us. So we're going to, if you're looking at the headline, we're going to talk about that in a minute related to Justin Steele being on MLB.com's top 10 list of breakout stars. Who could that be for 2024 for the Cubs? But I did want to mention before we get into that the Blue Jays, according to Mark Feinsand, I believe, are signing Kevin Kiermaier. So, of course, because nothing else is going on, we have to sit here and consider what does that do for the Cody Bellinger market, Ryan? Because to me, it's still playing out how I kind of felt like it was going to be. Go into January. At some point, Scott Boras is going to have to come down on whatever he's asking from whoever.
Yeah, that's the thing. I look at it and I've seen. Well, so I'm gonna bring this up real quick because you mentioned Mark Feinsand, but also all the national guys are talking about it, and from everybody's favorite reporter, Bob Nightingale, tweeted, the Blue Jays still have interest in free agent center fielder / first base Cody Bellinger, but the Cubs certainly have a greater need and desire to bring Bellinger back to Chicago. I kind of agree with that in that, the Blue Jays have a solid outfield. Bellinger may be a major upgrade to that, whatever, but I kind of looked at it and I didn't see it as okay, this is the end of the Blue Jays' pursuit of Cody Bellinger.
Okay,
Kevin Kiermaier, he's
a veteran.
He's a veteran, solid player. His
great defensively.
His best years are probably behind him, but he's still a good player for whatever team would have picked him up. But obviously, still going back to the Blue Jays. But with Cody Bellinger's youth, that's obviously something that any team would want, right? The youth, the ceiling. The defensive versatility, I think he could play anywhere in the outfield. He can play first base. So, if Vlad DHs more or something like that in Toronto, that would open a first base spot for Cody Bellinger. So he's got the defensive versatility to the point where like re-signing Kiermaier doesn't mean Cody Bellinger doesn't have a spot on the Blue Jays. Like there is a spot there. However, like I said, it does feel like a bit of like, okay, well, let's just get this deal done. You know, the Bellinger market could take some time. There's no guarantee we get him. Let's get Kevin Kiermaier back in the fold. Good piece to have, and then see what happens with Bellinger. Right? I don't look at it as the Blue Jays are out on Cody Bellinger. However, I do think, as Bob Nightingale said in his tweet, like there is now a greater need for the Cubs to re-sign Cody Bellinger, given that the Blue Jays do have a solid outfield now. Mm-hmm. Cody Bellinger remains on the market. We know. I mean, when we talked to John Morosi at the winter meetings, this was a few weeks ago now, and he even like said after you know, what did he call you?
He said I was very insightful.
Very insightful. But we talked about how this could extend into January and even beyond, right? Like the Cody Bellinger market with Scott Boras as his agent could keep, you know, it just could take a little bit to develop. You know, Scott Boras may not be coming down on what he wants to get for his client, which, you know, that's his job, right? Get the most money, best deal for your client. So he may not be coming down. And, you know, Jed and Carter Hawkins and the rest of the front office may not be willing to go up and meet them where they want to go. So it could be like a little bit of a stalemate. But and then not just for the Cubs, for any team that wants to sign Cody Bellinger, this could extend even longer. So all that is to say, I don't see that this is the Blue Jays being out on Cody Bellinger. I do see it as like, okay, the need is probably bigger for the Cubs now that the Blue Jays have a solid outfielder now back in the fold. Like they have a guy they could be willing to go into the season with as one of their starting outfielders. The Cubs' need just feels a little bit greater, whether it is in center field or first base or both. You know, depending on how the season plays out, the need does feel greater. It just it feels like it's going to take a little bit more time for the movement on Bellinger's market to really get going.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's also something that we thought going into the offseason it could take a while. And like as frustrating as it is for fans, like this is something that you could have predicted that like, hey, it's not going to be done by Christmas time or New Year's. Like it could be a little while longer after that.
Right. Carter Hawkins in the chat. Cody wants to defer payments on Belly until 2095, and tomorrow it will be 2100. All right, for every passing day, we add 5 years. There was a comment from Gary that I agree with.
Doesn't happen
Sarah.
often.
It doesn't happen often, but you know what? I'll give credit where credit is due. He says Blue Jays won't overpay for Belly. That's all this signing means, and I that's how I generally feel about everyone. I think it's obviously not surprising that the Cubs aren't going to overpay for him. They haven't overpaid for anyone since who? Jason Hayward?
I wouldn't even say that was the overpay at the time, right?
Well, he actually took less money to come to the Cubs.
Yeah.
I think the Cardinals offered Jason Hayward
it was
more money.
The Cardinals and someone else, I think, were in there. And so I'm like, I wouldn't even call that an overpay. I think that was like...
In hindsight,
it was, sure.
But at the time, it wasn't. He was the top position player on the market in the 2015 winter or whatever, right? I don't think you overpaid for Yu Darvish. I mean, if they had kept Yu Darvish, it would have got immense value from him if they had kept him. You know, I can't think of maybe John Lackey just because he was so far, you know, past his prime or whatever. He was making like 15, 16 million a year, and he was a very solid innings eater, you know, but I think we were all pretty happy when he was done. But yeah, I mean, the thing, I back to what Gary said, Blue Jays aren't going to overpay for him. I don't think anyone is, because no one's buying in on the one great year that Cody Bellinger had. And this isn't anything against Cody Bellinger. Everyone knows that I want Cody Bellinger back on this team. I've been tweeting it every freaking morning asking if he's signed yet, right? But it is a bit of an alarm whenever you see 10, 11, 12-year offers that it feels like Scott Boras is trying to get him when he had 3 bad / injury-plagued seasons and then had a really good season last year. He was a 4-WAR player. He performed when he absolutely needed to in order to get some sort of big payday. And he, you know, whether it's somewhere between $150 and $200 million, that's a still pretty good payday considering he wasn't very good for 3 years and then had a great year last year. But you just don't really know what you're going to get. I think that's how organizations are looking at it. So again, I think it's playing out the way that I feel like we here at this podcast felt I mentioned when Corey was here last week. I mentioned we were talking about Bellinger. We did the grading podcast related to him, and we were talking about reports that were coming out in October about how he was going to probably go into January because, yes, I agree, it is at a stalemate right now because Boris is doing everything he can to get all these years on his contract, and I think it's going to come down to the total, the money, the years are going to come down, and I think that I think whoever offers him an opt-out after maybe 2 or 3 years, I think that he might take that deal. And I don't
like
know
a Carlos Correa type.
Yeah.
A couple years
and
ago.
I still think it'll be 5, 6, 7 years. I still think it'll be like it won't be like Correa doing a 2-year with like an opt-out after 1. I think you'll still get a multi-year deal that that would keep him with the Cubs for extra amount of time. But he's 28 years old. If he gets an opt-out after 2 years, you're going to be 30 years old. And if he balls out for the next 2 years, wherever he is, he could potentially make more money if he shows he's healthy and that he's still hitting well, right? And he has the accolades. He's won. Like, there's a lot to like about him, and that's why I want him back on the Cubs. But I'm starting to – I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel like I've pretty justified in my thoughts back in October. So I agree. He's not like this Kiermaier thing isn't anything, but it is interesting to see. Now, I will say this related to Kiermaier. It's nice that the Cubs – to me, I'm happy the Cubs haven't gone out and signed someone like that because I think that would be more telling about the Cubs and how them basically backing off on Bellinger in some aspects. Because it's not like they don't have outfield guys. You know what I mean? Like they have PCA, they have Alexander Canario. I don't know how they feel about him playing center field, but he played a center field a couple games last year in September. I don't think he's a center fielder long term, but maybe, I'm just saying, like, they have guys who could play out there. So I'm happy the Cubs haven't acted on something like that. Yeah. So to me, that is also telling that they're still here and they're still in on trying to get Cody Bellinger. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I have seen the, like, Carlos Correa type deal thrown around there. And I remember saying it when Correa signed that deal with Minnesota. Like, what if these LeBron James type deals opt out after single year, 2 years, whatever? Because that's like LeBron started doing that in the NBA, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. Like he was signing those deals. And like Correa signed that one with the Twins. I think it was a 3-year deal, opt out after the first year and the second year, right?
Yeah.
So like, could Bellinger be that next? I mean, he kind of did that last year. He had the pillow contract here, but there was a mutual option at the end of it between him and the Cubs. It was it wasn't exactly the same thing, but it was, in a way, it was similar in that there was that potential for him to come back again this next year on the same contract or in the same contract without hitting free agency. And then obviously he opted to not agree to the mutual option. So there is a little bit of precedent with Cody Bellinger in that, he has reestablished his value, but does he maybe not get the type of deal that he wants and then decides, hey, you know what? If I have another really good all-star level season, that could get me more money next year and I'll only be 29, right? Like, I think there's potential for that. I don't know, like that, a deal like that, maybe even more likely for the Cubs because like a 9-year deal or something like that just doesn't feel like the type of deal the Cubs and the way this front office and just ownership or just the organization in general does not feel like the way that they want to operate right now, especially with Cody Bellinger. So a shorter term deal like that, like the Correa type deal, would make a little bit more sense for the Cubs.
I think that would make sense for any team.
Honestly. Well, I mean, it would make more sense that he would sign, like the Cubs would sign him to that deal versus a very long-term, big money deal. Yeah. Like, just if I'm saying what feels more likely to happen if it's the Cubs signing him, I would lean towards like that Correa deal feels more likely if that's what's going to happen with the Cubs than a crazy long-term deal. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird how his market has just been pretty silent. Like
despite all of the signings that have been made with the thought of maybe other teams getting desperate too.
Yeah. And then you just like don't really know. I don't think there's been any concrete, like, this is what Scott Boras wants, or this is what that side, like there has been that, but I've seen the range of like potential Cody Bellinger contracts be insane. Like there's been all over the place, going down to like a Carlos Correa type deal, going all the way up to like a 10-year deal worth however much money. Like it's the wide range of predictions or projections or whatever for what Cody Bellinger's contract might look like has been so. It's been so wide, and so it makes it hard to nail down what a deal with the Cubs or with anyone might actually look like at the end of this.
Yeah, I agree. Barb says it looks like you got a cute haircut.
I did get a cute haircut. Thank you, Barb.
Shout out to Barb.
Shout
Hope you had a good Christmas godmother.
Shout out to my guy Richard, Shea Legend Displays. It's my guy. Hooks it up.
There you go. Putting the good word out there.
Putting the good word out, Richard.
Credit
my
to
guy
you.
right there.
We're getting a lot of in the chat. We're getting a lot of people with like Fernando said 8 years, 250, and everyone kind of attacked him. Sorry, Fernando. I would not do that either. Maybe 3 weeks ago, whenever I was hurt by the Ohtani stuff, I got a little irrational, but I've come down on that. Brady says 7 for 180, no thanks. Or 7 for 180 or no thanks. I tend to agree, and I think most fans are right. I think that's fair, like 7 for 180, and I would love if there was an opt-out in there after 2 or 3 years. I would love for something like that. Gary says 150 to 190 is my guess he lands.
I have seen 7 for 180 a lot.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I saw it first or who was putting it out there. That is something I've seen a lot. I mean, that feels like a good, safe deal for the Cubs to sign, right? It's not, I think it's, $3 million more than what they signed Dansby for?
Yeah.
In total value.
For a guy who can play multiple defensive positions.
For a guy that
left-handed power bat.
We saw last year, at least for large portions of the season, still has that MVP level Cody Bellinger in him. He may not have it in him for an entire season. Like he may not get to total MVP level Cody Bellinger again. Yeah. But we saw that last year. He does still have some of that in him, and he has the ability to carry the offense for a while, right? Like weeks,
weeks.
Like there was
he carried the offense in July and August.
Yeah, he can still do that, and so we've seen that. So to only have to make it basically the same deal that they signed Dansby Swanson for, I think that's a deal the Cubs would be willing to give. I mean, even if there's a little bit more money in there, I think the one thing we know is that from this front office, it's not so much the dollar amount; it's the years. Yeah, it's like if they have to pay a little bit more than the average annual value, just a little bit more per year, they are more willing to do that than to have to spread out more money long term, like over more years. Just because, and this is something that like Tom Ricketts has said and Jed has said, it's just like in general, right? Like not talking about any specific person or any specific contract, but in general, the back end of that contract may be a little bit more painful than the front end, just because of how much money you may be paying the guy that may not be playing to that level anymore 8-9 years down the road, right? So it's not for this front office, it's not so much the money that they would have to give the total money or even the average annual value. It is the years. Like they're a little bit more averse to longer term deals in a number of years. And so if it's a 7-year deal, I think that's something that the Cubs would be a lot more interested in, especially, or even if they have to pay up a little bit more than what they paid, what they're, total guaranteed to Dansby Swanson. I think that's the year mark is at 7 years is something that the Cubs definitely would be interested in.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree with that too. So, Godfather, Michael Collada, hope you had a good Christmas. Let's see your chat. He says, why is everyone trying to save Ricketts money? I don't get it. It's very on brand of you. I like Ryan said, I think it's more about the years. And that's how I felt about Yamamoto too. Like what Yamamoto ended up signing for what was it, 12 years? Wasn't it 12 years?
12 years, yeah. Right.
12 years, $300 and some million for a guy who's never played in Major League Baseball. I get it. 25 years old. He like everyone's saying, generational talent. One of the best pitchers to come out of Japan since Yu Darvish. All those types, those things. But to me, it was never the money. It was always the years. Like 12 years for a guy who has proved nothing here. So, and that's how I, in general, look at the whole thing with Bellinger too. It's not that I don't want him. It's not that I'm not willing to go however long, but at some point, you got to have a line when it comes to how much you're going to invest into a guy. You know what I mean? Like, and with pitchers especially, it can be a roller coaster because you can, unless you're, there's very few pitchers who have just been consistently great year after year after year, and that's what the Dodgers are banking on Yamamoto to do. And if they do, then all credit to him and to the Dodgers and all that. But 12 years is a long time, man. So, and it's kind of similar with Bellinger, just because we like I said, we don't know what they're really going to get out of him beyond this upcoming season, these next couple of years. I want to believe that he's going to continue what he did because he's still young, he's still athletic, he can play multiple positions, he can do it all, right? And he showed that he carried the Cubs offense literally for a handful of months. And even though he cooled off in September, he still hit. He still found ways to get on base. He still found ways to impact the game. You know what I mean? So he's obviously a guy that needs to be here, in my opinion. So anyway,
we'll see. It's. I get the frustration that we're sitting here on the day after Christmas, and there's just nothing's happened. Especially when in terms of Cody Bellinger, like I get that, but it's just that I don't see Scott Boras coming down to what the Cubs want to give Bellinger. I don't see the Cubs wanting to pay up to what Scott Boras wants for Cody Bellinger. They're going to have to meet in the middle somewhere. I don't know where that middle is. And it might take, like I said, a little bit while longer to see if they can even get to that middle or if any other team can get to that middle. Like I agree. Like you said at the beginning of the offseason, like your number one priority was bringing back Bellinger. Now, obviously, the whole Shohei pursuit maybe change things up a little bit, but now we're back to that should be like the Cubs' number one priority is bringing back Cody Bellinger. And if they have to wait it out, they have to wait it out. I get the frustration that it hasn't happened yet, but
any team out there could have already gone and overpaid for him. And the fact that it hasn't, again, like I said, only makes me feel even more confident that he's going to be a Cub.
Yeah, so. We'll see. Again, I can't imagine what the Cubs convention will be like if Cody Bellinger's still not signed by then. Right. Even if he is signed by then, it still might be a bunch of angry people. We'll see. But
hopefully we'll all be there to witness it, right?
We'll see.
Well, we talked about Cody Bellinger longer than I expected, so we'll do these ads and then get into this next segment related to breakout stars for next season. First, I'm going to tell you all about CIRCA. CIRCA is my favorite app. It's become one of my favorite apps, right? And one of the reasons is the type money line splits, right? Games will strive to be minus 110 split on CIRCA Sports menu, unlike other sports books, which may use minus 115 or minus 120. CIRCA keeps as little money as possible on large market bets, especially compared to other books. CIRCA does not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other books who do limit winning players. They encourage bettors to download and explore other sports betting apps available to compare the lines with each sports book, which they deserve a lot of credit for because not a lot of books would do that, right? But you can see that they strive, again, to have those minus 110 splits on those large market bets more so than other books out there. And, again, you can go and compare yourself. And then finally, one of my favorite things about them is their customer service is one of the best. There are real people behind the CIRCA Sports brand who resolve issues in a timely fashion, unlike other books who use chatbots. All aspects of the app are being run by the same team that runs the main CIRCA Sportsbook at CIRCA Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, my second favorite place in the world. Download the CIRCA Sports Illinois app at circasports.com/Illinois-app to sign up today. Also be on the lookout for CIRCA events, watch parties, and tailgates. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER, text GAMB to 833-234, or visit areyourreallywinning.com.
I got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. That's daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. It's a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you can get DeMar DeRozan and DJ Moore at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. I mean, that sounds like something that I'd be interested in. DeMar may not be the most inclined to shoot 3-pointers, but he might surprise you. And DJ Moore, we know how much Justin Fields loves DJ Moore. So that's something you can do over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. It's got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, and that's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Cody, you use Prize Picks. What's your favorite experience with Prize Picks?
Well, I have experienced the injury insurance policy, all right? And this was like a few weeks back. But say you had LeBron James yesterday to go over, his point total or some sort. And at one point in that game, he was on the ground holding his knee like he was Derrick Rose 10 years ago. Sorry to hurt everyone's heart there. And then he got back up and everything was fine. So he obviously, in classic LeBron form, decided to over-exaggerate something. But if he had really gotten hurt and you had his point total in Prize Picks, in your Prize Picks thing, you wouldn't have lost your money, which is something, again, that I have experienced on the negative side with, sports betting apps and stuff like that. But with Prize Picks, you just get your money back. Yeah, you just get your money back. It's a beautiful thing. So I love that. Also, this past weekend, they had a special, was like Kevin Durant to just score a point. And you could just put it in your lineup or whatever, and then add it with something else. Just added extra juice. Like they had all kinds of great promos.
There you go. So let me tell you, go to prizepicks.com/CHGO and use code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CHGO and use code CHGO. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Prize Picks. Go check them out.
Awesome. Okay, well, so this past weekend, obviously nothing with the Cubs happened, but I was really happy to see that MLB.com had our guy Justin Steele on a certain graphic, and it was for like the 2023 breakout stars. They're like the top, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9? Yeah, the top 9 unexpected breakout stars of 2023. They just did an entire lineup for just like each position, and they had Justin Steele for starting pitcher. They had Jordan Montgomery in there too, so I guess they went with 2 starting pitchers, whatever. Included, there's 3 here. They have Kyle Bradish as well. So I don't know how they did this, but there's 3 starting pitchers, a couple outfielders, a shortstop, 2 second baseman, Bryson Stott, Luis Robert Jr., Jordan Montgomery, Nolan Jones, J.P. Crawford, Kyle Bradish, and then Ha-Seong Kim. I think that's how you pronounce his name for the Padres. But anyway, I was happy to see Justin Steele on that because he was a breakout star for the Cubs in 2023. Yeah. I think we all, I quote tweeted from our account saying we were not surprised, but that was just because he had such a great second half of 2022, and we were optimistic that he would continue that into 2023. Obviously, we didn't know if that would, so there's a little bit of sarcasm in that, but so I was happy to see that they included Steele on this. So, with that said, who can be the next Justin Steele in 2024 for the Cubs in terms of breakout stars? A guy who maybe makes the All-Star team that's never made it before, who, takes a huge step,
Yeah. Well, I think we look at it as like you mentioned, his second half of 2022, and this is like mid-June on. It was after the whole John Lester thing, and that wasn't like the thing that made Justin Steele a good pitcher, but it was around that time where we kind of saw his numbers just improve and improve and improve. So the way I looked at it was media, the media that covers the Cubs or Cubs fans or whoever, like knew that Justin Steele was a really good pitcher. Sorry, I still got
JF1 out there.
Still got Justin Fields on the brain. Knew that Justin Steele was a really good pitcher,
Right.
and then all of a sudden he became a guy that nationally people knew he was a really good pitcher, and that's the way I look at it as a breakout star. Right, like he was really good for a half a season, but then he became like Cy Young caliber contender pitcher, and whether he can replicate it remains to be seen. And that's something that like they've all talked about. Like whatever you did last year doesn't matter anymore. You got to do it and do it and do it again. But that was like whereas the year before we knew that Justin Steele was pretty good. Last year was when baseball world knew Justin Steele was pretty good.
Made the All-Star team. Everyone knows. And if his last 2 starts of the year where it felt like he just kind of ran out of gas, if he had pitched like like the All-Star he was, not only would his ERA probably finish under 3 for the season, but he probably, hopefully, would have been a Cy Young finalist. It was very I wouldn't say that I was pissed that he wasn't a Cy Young finalist, but it was like, man, he was so good for so long, but those last couple starts at the very end of the year hurt him on the Cy Young hope. But anyway, there's plenty of time to talk about Justin Steele. I wanted to use this as someone who do we project for next year. I've seen some comments in the chat. Someone said Nico. Someone said Miguel Amaya. Someone said, I don't know, Sarah, can you scroll up?
So it's like who could have the Justin Steele type breakout in 2024?
Someone says Wicks. That's just crazy to me. Keep going. Canario. Carter Hawkins says Canario.
I see another Amaya. PCA Godfather.
PCA Godfather says PCA. Yeah. So me and Ryan came up with our own for each one. Yeah. You want to go first?
I'll take it. And so the way I explained it, the way I looked at Justin Steele as the breakout guy was pretty good the year before, but then became known nationally, all-star level type player. That's how I looked at it. The guy I picked is Nico Horner. I mean, you look at some of his stats right here; they're on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you see him. If not, I mean, he was nearly a 5 wins above replacement player according to Fangraphs, with only a 102 WRC plus, so barely above average. I mean, solid slash line, 283 average, 346 on base, 383 slug, 9 homers, 98 runs, 68 RBIs, and 43 stolen bases, which I believe was the most since Juan Pierre in 2006 for a Cub.
Tony Campana, don't forget. I'm pretty sure he passed Tony Campana.
I think he did pass Tony Campana. That's what I'm saying. He's got the most in 17 years for the Cubs.
Maybe Juan Pierre was the other one.
And then he won the second base National League Gold Glove Award this past season, which I think we
didn't talk about enough because I think the council news came out.
It did happen
right
the
after.
next day. Yeah.
We never really actually gave Nico his flowers.
But so we knew that he was a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. We just defender, right? Like he was a finalist.
The middle guy.
He was a finalist a few years back. He was awesome at shortstop last year defensively. We kind of thought it was a little bit of a snub when he didn't become a finalist for that last year at shortstop. But we knew when he moved back to second base, like he was going to be a really good defensive guy there, and he proved it. Obviously, like he was a nearly 5 WAR player with just above league average stats in many different categories offensively. So we knew, and he proved how good he is defensively. I think there is offensive upside for him he could still tap into. I think the power numbers are not exactly where you want it. He only had a 100 isolated power, which is just basically taking away singles and just adding up second base. Like it's slugging percentage minus average, so it's just kind of looking at how many extra base hits you get pretty much on average. I still think there's more in there for him. He's 26, going to be 27. Like he's still not prime, right? Like there's still more in there I think for him offensively. He's already a Gold Glove second baseman. I look at he had a higher, if we're looking at wins above replacement, he was higher than Luis Arias, who was the starting second baseman for the National League in the All-Star game, and Ozzie Albies, who was one of the other finalists for that, who also was an All-Star at second base. He had a higher F4 than both of them in about the same amount of games played. Now, he needs to prove it, obviously, right? He's got to show he's got a little bit more power in there, maybe just the on-base numbers, increase the walk rate a little bit. Like, there are different ways for him to improve that he has to do himself, right? Like no one can do it for him. He's got to do it himself. I just think there's more in there for him, and I think he will tap into that. I'm not going to say he's going to be starting second baseman for the National League in the All-Star game next year, but I do think he could be in the running for that All-Star spot. I think he could even be one of the reserves that gets in there if he's not selected as a starter. I think Nico Hoerner, again, comparing it to the Steele, what I look at it with Steele is people in Chicago, Cubs fans, Cubs media, whoever it is, know how good and how important Nico Hoerner is to this team. I think next season is when people around baseball start to look at, this guy is really good. This guy is an all-star caliber player. He may not make the all-star team next year, but I think next year is when people around baseball start to look at Nico Hoerner as like, this guy could be an all-star. This guy is that level. I think next year is when we see that. And so for me, when I think of breaking out, I think of breaking out on a national level, and I think Nico has potential for that next year.
That's fair.
Again, on him to do it, but I think he's got potential for that.
I would agree. There was a comment from Brady. He was asking, Ryan, if Nico is your guy, he has to get 15 to 20 homers or hit over 300. What's more probable to you? I'll say for me, I think it's more probable that he hits over 300. But I agree that if he takes that step and really becomes one of those breakout stars, that he's got to have more power. He's got to slug more. Honestly, I'm not even asking for more homers. I'm asking for more extra base hits. Yeah. He led the Cubs in hits last year, but a large majority of them were singles that he, quote unquote, turned into doubles based off stealing bases. But to me, for him to really become a star, a breakout star, a guy that, hits the national level, he's got to hit more extra base hits. And to me, it doesn't have to be homers. To me, it can be doubles, it can be triples. I mean, the guy's fast, right? He's got to turn some of those singles into doubles.
Well, and that's when I mentioned his ISO, right? His isolated power, that's low. Like 100 ISO is low. He obviously needs to improve that, and that comes with, just hitting more balls into the gaps, reaching the wall, hitting it to right field, and getting that extra base in there. Like, We've seen the aggressiveness on the base paths. We've seen him turn singles that just bring the center fielder a little bit offline. We've seen him turn those into doubles. Like, that happens, but I'm with you. I think the power is just overall slugging wise, right? Just need to see more of that, and that's hopefully what he's been working on this off season, and working with Dustin Kelly and the rest of the hitting coaches on figuring out how to maximize that aspect of the game. I don't know if he's going to hit 20 plus homers, but I don't think 15 is unreasonable. He hit 10 2 years ago, and we thought he could hit a few more, right? So I don't think 15 is unreasonable for Nico if him and the hitting coach team can just kind of figure out the way to maximize his power output. I think that would make him in just in just baseball's eyes, right? He would look like a even better player if he plays up to that power, that WRC plus rises a little bit more. Like, I think he has potential to improve all around offensively, including in the power. Again, it's just up to him to do it, but I think that there's that potential in there, and that's why when I look at who can be that breakout guy for the Cubs, I look at Nico as like, I think this guy can put himself on that level.
Yeah. Gary says that Jake Slaughter will be the breakout star. Way to stay on brand, Gary. Well done, brother. We got a super chat from Chris. Just joined up. Good vibes today because I got a day off. Go Cubs, and please, Jed, do something. Yeah. I can't agree more. Okay, so thanks for the super chat, by the way, Chris. Always appreciate you hanging out with us. So mine, I went with Seiya Suzuki, and I saw Galvin in the chat. He said Seiya Suzuki. He said, I'd like to see Seiya Suzuki also break out. The reason I went with Seiya Suzuki is because he ended 2023 on a really hot stretch. Like, honestly, he was probably a better hitter than Cody Bellinger, those last 2 months of the year. Maybe not so much August, but definitely in September. He was a big part of the office in September. Of course, he's to me, his biggest problem has been consistency. And he's had some injuries, right? Like, in year one, he was hurt in the middle of the year.
Was it like his finger or something like that?
Yeah,
right?
Something like that, right?
Sliding
He played in 111 games in 2022, right? Last year, he played 138, and the large a large portion of those games missed were in April.
Yeah, the oblique when he
because
missed
of the oblique, he missed all spring training
a few weeks into the season. Yeah,
he had a really good May if you go back, and it's actually surprising considering he was coming off the oblique, and then he really struggled in June and July. But then in August and September, he really turned it up. I believe he led baseball in slugging percentage those last 2 months of the year. His numbers increased in all facets last year compared to 2022. He was at 3.2 FWAR compared to 2.1 in 2022. His strikeout rate went down just a couple percentage points from 24.7 to 22.3. His walk rate went up a little bit, 10.1% compared to 9.4 the season before. Again, they're not huge difference, but I will say, 20 home runs compared to 14 in 2022 is different. 74 RBIs compared to 46. He scored 75 runs compared to 54, which probably is more credit to the entire team than just him, obviously, right? All I'm saying is that his numbers across the board increase compared to his first season. 126 weighted runs created plus compared to 116 in 2022 as well. I think he has the kind of makeup to be an all-star caliber player. Yeah. You want me to get real bold? If he breaks out the way that I dream, the way that I want, he's going to be in the MVP race next year. Mm-hmm. That's what I really want.
That's your bold prediction,
That could be my bold prediction for next year, for him to be a top 7 MVP candidate in the National League. And, of course, there's a lot to fix on this team still, and I know y'all are going to yell at me about this, whatever. But he hit so well those last 2 months. To me, it's all about consistency for him. Yeah. Staying on the field and being consistent, right? All of us, or all of you in the chat, love to hate David Ross. Well, one of the things that he definitely did well was when he sat Suzuki, and it kind of gave him that reset. And then he came back and played really well those final 2 months of the year. The Cubs are really, no matter whether the Cubs add to this roster or not, they're going to need Suzuki to, in some form or fashion, they're going to need him to be more consistent next year. If they add to this roster, bring Bellinger back, make the team better, he can perhaps become that X factor that puts them over the top. If they don't add to this roster and they rely on prospects or whatever, and all the worst possibilities in my head that go around in it, he will have to be the best offensive hitter, run producer at least, on this team, right? So to me, he's shown that he can be a really good two-way player. I thought his defense improved in the outfield last year too. He was an improved player for the Cubs last year. A lot of people might not agree with that just because it felt like it was hot and cold because he had a good May, but then had a terrible June and July, but then was great in August and September, right? Again, just needs to be more consistent, but he has all the makeup to be an all-star caliber player for the Cubs next year. So. Yeah,
no, he, what I said with Bellinger, where he showed he could carry the offense for a few weeks at a time. Say did the same thing for a while there for the Cubs. You mentioned quick reset. I think it was 4 games, something like that.
Yeah.
Where I think he had 1 plate appearance at the end of a game.
He came back and he was hitting 8th or 9th in the lineup. That's how bad it got.
And then from then on, for basically 2 months, he was one of the best hitters in baseball. He has that in him. That's one of the things that when the Cubs first signed him was one of the things that we heard about him, right? He has just offensively was one of the best players in Japan. He may not be that same level in the major leagues, but he had potential to just be really, really good offensively. I think I'm with you on that. It's just about consistency. Can he put it together for a full 162? It doesn't have to be as, his August and September as good as that the entire season. I mean, it would be obviously great for the Cubs if it was, right? But I don't think you can expect that reasonably. But if he can put really good months together throughout the season, limit the lows, right? Because that's the other part is he's really had extended lows in this first 2 seasons with the Cubs and Major League Baseball. It's all about consistency, like you said. He has to just be able to do it for a full 162. Just limit the lows, man. Limit the lows. Try to get those highs going as long as possible, and have some of those stretches where you're one of the best hitters in baseball. Because if you want your dream of top 7 MVP finish to be true, he's going to need that. He may need to be the best offensive player on the Cubs. He may need to be Cody Bellinger level of what Cody Bellinger did this past season, even if the Cubs do re-sign Bellinger. Because
That's true.
Yes, he improved defensively, but his calling card is going to be offense. And if he can put that consistency together that we just haven't seen in the first 2 years, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I think as like top 7 MVP level, but he could be knocking in on that door for an All-Star appearance, right?
Yeah.
If he could do that, because he has shown he can be that good for a long stretch of time.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't disagree that he could be the breakout star for the Cubs in 2024 either.
You don't lead baseball in slugging percentage for a couple months and it be some sort of fluke, in my opinion. So, and he's going to be 29 next year, too. It's not like he's old. I know, like, he's 2 years in Major League Baseball now, and, he was, 27 when he came over. But he should be entering his prime in 2024, right? So, when you think about what the Cubs have on top of, the prospects that are scheduled to debut next season, again, they still got to fix a lot on this roster. And if they fix most of that, like I still project to happen, that only makes his value even better because that puts him in the middle of a lineup with some really good hitters on top of some of your prospects you got coming up that we're all really high on. When we were talking about, or when we asked the chat, a lot of people put PCA in there. PCA is going to be in that lineup at some point next year. I don't know if he's going to start the year on the team, but he's going to be in that lineup at some point. You add him to a lineup with Horner, Happ, Seiya, and whoever else. Like when they add to this roster, it potentially only makes Seiya better because the more better hitters you add in that lineup, the less pressure is on him to not only perform, but it opens up opportunities to get more fastballs, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I look at it because I still believe they're going to fix this roster.
Good players make teams better. I think we can
we
can agree on that one.
Right. Okay. So that's kind of how I feel about that. I've enjoyed everyone's 2 cents on that. So
I did do a poll in YouTube, and I asked everybody who their next breakout star for the Chicago Cubs would be in 2024. In between Steele, Horner, and Suzuki, Suzuki won with 67% of the votes out of 30 votes so far.
It's certainly possible. Like, he has shown he can be. Again, he has shown he can be that guy that carries the offense for a few weeks at a time. Like he showed that last year at the end of the season, but it's just about putting it together for full 162. I think he can. I don't think it's unreasonable to think he could be one of the best or an all-star next season. I don't think that's unreasonable to think that. It's just he has to put it together himself.
I voted Steele. I'm just saying
He
that's
already
what
broke
I
out.
voted.
he already broke out, sir.
I'm
I'm kind of
know.
confused on why Steele is in the poll.
He already broke
But
out.
it's
I
okay.
don't know.
But you're saying he'll break out again.
Yeah,
you're saying he'll do it
You're
again.
saying he's going to go even higher. He's going to actually win the Cy
Oh
Young.
yeah, he's gonna win it all. Then I'd be a Nico fan then.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
We'll see. I think there's definitely. We were reading some of the comments earlier, like Miguel Amaya, former #1 prospect for the Cubs. Like, I don't know if he'll be an all-star level player, but he could be a really solid piece for this team, a really good piece for this team, especially when paired with Yan Gomes next year. That catching tandem could be sneaky, like one of the more underrated spots for the Cubs that really help them succeed next season.
Yeah.
And then we'll see with some of these other prospects, like Pico Armstrong. Who knows if he starts the season on the opening day roster or not? But I do feel like he will be, or the Cubs will expect him to be a big contributor in 2024, whether he starts the season or not on the team. Canario, we'll see what happens with him, but Jordan Wicks is up and should still be up to start the season. I mean, you look at Ben Brown. We'll see what happens with Ben Brown. The expectation was he would have made his debut last season. Obviously didn't. Injuries and a little ineffectiveness kind of kept him from that. But I think we're expecting him again to make his debut at probably earlier than later, or sooner rather than later in 2024. But then you have Cade Horton, who's a possibility. I mean, maybe Matt Shaw, like who really knows? But there's a lot of names there that
You're kind of.
They may not be your breakout stars of 2024, but could put themselves on the potential list for the next season when we do this again a year from now.
I made another one. And I put PCA, Wix, and Canaro on it. So
Well, that's a nice little tease because we're going to talk about prospects here in the final 10 minutes
let's see
after I
what
do this
people's
ad.
opinion is.
All right. It's getting easier for businesses to switch to electric vehicles, guys. That's something we can all get behind for the health of the planet and for the well-being of all of us who share it.
Yeah, Cody, the electric grid is evolving to meet your cleaner energy needs as we all move with confidence towards an electric tomorrow. Whether you have one delivery van or a whole fleet of shipping trucks, ComEd can help guide you to make the changes that make sense.
Well, Ryan, what should business owners do?
Well, business owners should go to ComEd.com/clean to learn more about the resources, fleet rebates, and infrastructure incentives available to help businesses go electric. If you own a business, don't wait. Start making your plan today to switch to electric vehicles. Good for business, good for the planet, good for all of us. Go to ComEd.com/clean.
Sorry, I was reading the chat. Did you say ComEd.com/clean?
Yeah, go now and see how going electric connects us to a better way of doing business and a better future for generations to come. I also got to tell you about our friends at Empire.
Oh, I love our friends at Empire.
Friends at Empire. With Empire today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they have copycats, but Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, speed, so competitors advertise low-quality products that Empire simply won't carry. Empire won't promise the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that you wouldn't put in theirs. They keep shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Empire's philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. They got a virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. Just snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be frustrating. You might talk to someone today who was working in plumbing yesterday. Flooring is all Empire today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. They pride themselves on their convenient shop-at-home service. They help customers shop for floors where they use their floors, so you can see exactly what their new floors will look like in their home's lighting and decor, so they can make an informed decision. They service their own warranties. If an issue does arise, just call Empire. They service all warranties themselves. You won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. So schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/CHGO for details. $350?
$350.
That's crazy.
I know Godfather, he let us know that he used it. Used
There you
code
go.
CHGO, got $350 off.
Be
Credit
like
to-
the Godfather.
Yes. Maybe not necessarily so negative, but be like him and use Empire.
Yeah.
I would like to say also, Barb says that this black box on our set looks like a Dodgers box. It's not. It's
It
what you get when you
says-
become a diehard, bro.
Die hard.
You get a T-shirt and all that stuff. And I'm giving free ads.
20%
here.
off
We're not supposed to do
events.
this.
Yeah. Access to our Discord, our
right.
CHGO Lounge,
Oh, yeah.
where all our favorite Cubs fans are in there talking every day.
For sure. They're definitely there. They're definitely there. I promise you. So I'm just letting you know, Barb, that's what you get whenever you become a diehard. Go to allchgo.com and become one today. So like we kind of teased it the best way I could, Luke Stuckmeyer style. Last week, the guys over at Just Baseball, which I don't know about you, Ryan, but they're some of my favorite baseball people out there. They're very knowledgeable about the entire league, whether it's the majors or prospects. Last night I was laying in bed watching this YouTube video on my new 55-inch flat screen of the guys from Just Baseball talking about the top 15 prospects for the Cubs. And I was interested because I always like to get a take from people who aren't just Cubs prospect guys. Like, I love Greg Huss. I love Greg Zumack. I love Brian Smith. They're all very, very smart and know what they're talking about when it comes to Cubs prospects. But it's also nice to get an insight from people who are following the prospects all across the league.
Yeah, not just Cubs.
And these guys love the Cubs farm system, all right? So I figured we could talk about it today because I think it came out Thursday last week. So me and Luke and Kevin didn't get a chance to talk about it. I mean, Stucky Claus, whatever.
Yeah, I heard it got a little off the rails here on, was it Thursday?
It was one of the greatest shows we've ever had.
I had no clue what they were even talking about, honestly, the whole show.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened. All I know is that I ended up wearing our FOCO Cubs overalls.
Yeah, there was no rundown.
And Luke was dressed like Stucky Claus once again. So I guess we could just go through their top 15 that they gave for the Cubs. Starts with PCA, number 1 overall, which isn't necessarily a surprise. Cade Horton, number 2. I thought Owen Casey at number 3 was a little bit of a surprise, but they're very high on Owen Casey. Matt Shaw, number 4. Kevin Alcantara, number 5. Jefferson Rojas at number 6.
That's an interesting one because they're a little bit higher on Jefferson. Like I look at MLB Pipeline, their top 30 Cubs. Rojas is number 11, so it's still relatively high, but I guess Just Baseball is a little bit higher on what Jefferson Rojas has to offer.
Yeah. Moises Ballesteros, number 7. James Triantos, number 8. And then Jordan Wicks, number 9. He hasn't technically graduated yet, but it says a lot when Jordan Wicks is number 9, and we've already seen him have success at the major league level, right? Jackson Ferris, number 10. Number 11, Ben Brown. Number 12, Alexander Canario. Number 13, B.J. Murray, who was in the Futures game this past year, I believe. Number 14, Michael Arias. Number 15, Luis Vasquez. They had like an honorable mention. They mentioned Brennan Davis, Christian Franklin, Drew Gray, Christian Hernandez, Luke Little, who we saw at the major league level this year. Hayden McGeary, Pedro Ramirez, Josh Rivera, who they drafted in the last draft, like I think 2nd or 3rd round. Jackson Wiggins, also a high pick in this year's draft. And then Dernich Valdez, I believe is how you say his name. I hope I'm saying it right. Those are all like the, honorable mentions, I guess. But I encourage, after you watch the show, I encourage you guys to go watch. They did an hour and a half talking about their top 15 and why for the Cubs prospects. And it was very in-depth. And in some aspects, I kind of learned a lot in terms of when I should expect certain guys. Like, they love Kevin Alcantara. They think that his ceiling is so high, but he also, the way they were explaining him, it was kind of like Javi Baez in some aspects, to where, like, he has some really good highs, but man, he has some lows, and he's got to work on getting the ball up a little bit more. His ground ball rate was too high for the type of player that he could be, all kinds of stuff. And so, related to the top 15 in general, it is interesting, just like you mentioned with Rojas at number 6, Ben Brown at number 11
versus number 5, I think, on Pipeline.
Right.
Yeah, number 5.
Right. And, Canario at number 12. I mean, multiple guys here who have made major league debuts that are lower than
Wicks is number 9.
Yeah, like lower than guys who haven't even made their major league debut yet. So, and to me, the biggest thing that I got from them whenever I was listening to them is, I think it was Jack McMullen. He, when that video started, he said, whether the Cubs are big spenders or not, I love the Cubs going into 2024. And again, I'm not saying, they even said this too. They should spend and they should do this and that, but they have a lot of talent coming that it's going to make this team better. So, put all the complaints about front office and everything aside, there's a lot to be excited about with this farm system. I think we all know that. I just wanted to go through this a little bit just because, one, it is exciting, because 3-4 years ago, we're like, man, this farm system stinks. This was a reason. This was a major reason why they traded Rizzo, Bryant, Baez, Craig Kimbrell, because the farm system was so bad. They've got it to a point to where they are a top 3 farm system in all baseball. And I see a lot of these guys on this list that could make huge impacts for the Cubs in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah. As Gary points out, yes, Pipeline has not been updated. These are the midseason rankings, so they will look differently in spring training. Thank you, Gary, for correctly pointing that out.
Credit to you for giving Gary credit.
Yeah, both of us gave Gary credit today. This is the first.
Credit to us.
No, I understand that, Gary. Don't worry. But just going off their midseason rankings, guys that they thought highly of, obviously Just Baseball does it now, or even vice versa, that they think a little bit higher of guys than Pipeline did a few months ago. So, I guess we'll see. You know, Pipeline's going to have their stuff. Baseball America will have their stuff. Like there's going to be a lot of different lists that come out, whether it's some of these media outlets that everyone knows, or even, you know, our guys at Northside Bound that do their own ranking and stuff like that. Like there will be a lot of different rankings out there. What I can tell you is that the way the Cubs farm system looks across baseball, the baseball world, as you've pointed out, the farm system is, from the outside, it looks to be as healthy as it's been in a long, long time. Not just us saying that, not just people that follow the Cubs say that. Like, this is national reporters, national analysts, the prospect gurus nationally, whatever. They look at the Cubs farm system as one of the best in baseball. That is obviously a good thing. And not all these guys that are on these lists are going to be Cubs. If the Cubs do their jobs the right way, some of these guys will be dealt for guys that can help at the major league level in areas where, you know, obviously the Cubs, like, they have a lot of good outfield prospects, right? Not all of them are gonna debut in the Cubs and be outfielders for them, but maybe a few of them can help the Cubs get players that can help their major league team in areas where they're not as the depth is not as good, right? So not all these guys in the top 15, whether it's just baseball or MLB Pipeline's top 30, whatever it is, not all those guys are going to be Cubs in the future. But to have enough guys where you look at it and it's like the Cubs will be fine even if they do deal away some of these guys, that is a great spot for them to be in. The national people look at the Cubs as having one of the best farm systems in baseball. Yes, the Cubs should still spend money, add to the major league roster this offseason. They have to, obviously. They need to fill out the roster. But when you look at where they're at in this rebuild, at least for the farm system-wise, they are in a very healthy spot. And it'll be interesting to see how, you know, these top 15 or whoever you're looking at, how they, you know, their development continues in 2024.
Yeah. I will say this. I know we got to get out of here. But some of the things that I took away from their conversation they had, Luis Vasquez, they ranked number 15. They believe that he could be like part of the Cubs bench in 2024. Not necessarily opening day, but at some point. Obviously, he played really, last year was his breakout in Iowa, but his defense, they described his defense as, you know, like a wizard, right? So the thing is he's a shortstop. So, and Dansby Swanson is there. So I think that it could be very valuable to have a guy like him on the bench to be able to come in. And we talked a lot last year about how guys like Swanson and Horner barely took any days off. I think that could be beneficial for a long season for a guy like that to be able to come in and at least give you defense. We'll see if he can hit. I think that there's potential to hit, but he definitely showed that he can play defense. So I'm intrigued a lot, like as a underrated guy that no one really talks a lot about in the Cubs system. Everyone's talking about PCA. Everyone's talking about Cade Horton, those guys. A guy like Luis Vasquez, I think, can be very valuable. And the reason that I love it is because in years past when the system wasn't very good, they would have to go out and sign some veteran or whatever and then hope that he, does this or that. And there were multiple instances where that didn't happen. Daniel Descalso is the perfect example. He was a veteran way past like whatever you would call his prime. But if you have your own guy that's making, the minimum money, like there's value in that. And if he, actually becomes a major contributor in some form or fashion, you're not only increasing the potential trade value, but you're also just getting really good value off your bench.
Well, and that's especially true on the pitching side because that was where they spent a lot of money trying to plug holes.
Right.
And, didn't always work out. Mm-hmm. And that's because they weren't developing their own pitchers. And if they can do that this time around, that, and then continue to obviously replenish the farm system or keep bringing up guys on cheaper deals, guys making their debuts, whatever, to just supplement the roster. That's when you look at it and you're like, okay, they have a lot of money. They can go out and get some of these top guys because they're doing a good job of developing the supplemental guys, the guys that fill out the roster, that help out, that maybe, the guys that come up and relieve and then get optioned down, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like if they can do that at a great level, then you're talking about you're not having to spend all this money to fill out the roster. You can allocate a lot more of that to top tier players if that's the route they choose. But
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Like, just having the farm system in the position it is now makes that more. The possibilities for that are higher because you have all these really good prospects that get talked about in a great light nationally. That these guys may actually be the guys that are those roster fillers that supplement the roster, do well on cheap deals on little money, where you can take the rest of that money and use it to sign some of these top guys. Like, that's the way, obviously the Dodgers do that a lot. The Braves do that, but the Braves also sign guys to like what feel like below market deals or extensions. Like the Dodgers do that all the time. They spend a lot of money, but they have guys that fill out the rest of the roster, guys that are coming up through the system. That's the level the Cubs are trying to get to. And at least on the farm system side, it looks like they're getting to that level. And then we'll see where everything goes from there.
For sure. All right. Well, sorry if this was not like therapy to you guys and just reminding you about how the Cubs haven't spent so far. We're trying to be optimistic here. At least I am. It's another day. The Cubs didn't do anything. Hopefully they do something, and we will be here when they do something between now and 1:20 tomorrow afternoon. So, again, I'm really excited about what's coming up on the farm. Now the Cubs need to fill some of these other holes that the farm might not be able to right away, if they plan on being at least in the division race.
Yep.
And they, like, right now, I would say where the roster is, and this is putting it nicely, I would say they're a 75-win team right now. And that, again, I think that's putting it nicely. Obviously, they could exceed that if some guys break out, like we talked in today's show. But obviously, there's work to be done, and I still think that those things will be done. So we just continue to wait, and it sucks. So
that's the baseball offseason for it.
Yeah, the MLB needs to fix the baseball offseason instead of implementing new rules like 18 seconds instead of 20 in between pitches on the pitch clock or whatever it was last week. How about, can we find a way to speed up the offseason? Can we get some excitement? You know what I mean?
There you go.
All right. So again, we will be back tomorrow at 1:20 to talk about something. I don't know what yet, but we will talk about something.
And if something big happens, as Barb asks, if something big happens,
we will be here.
We will be here live to talk about it.
Live. We will definitely be here live. All right. Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs podcast. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
We all silly like the mayor.